So we've done a lot already in terms of modifying the look here. We removed the Powered by Drupal footer. We removed the user links in the upper right-hand corner and moved them to the lower left-hand corner. And we removed the user login block. The only block left to deal with is the search box. So notice that as we're an anonymous user right now, we're not seeing that block. And most of the time, when you can see something on the site as one user, but not as another user or an anonymous user, it's a permissions problem. So let's talk briefly about what permissions are. I'm going to jump back to the browser where we're an administrator, and I'm going to click on the people link in the top navigation. Now, we haven't talked much about user accounts yet because we've only been using the site as a single user. So we'll come back to this idea of creating additional users for different purposes in a moment. But right now we're comparing a logged in user, which is an authenticated user, to a non-logged in user, which is an anonymous user. As a logged in user, we can see the search box, and as an anonymous user, we can't. Let's go ahead and take a look at what permissions each type of user has by clicking on the Permissions tab in the upper right-hand corner here. Now let's talk about this interface briefly. On the left-hand side, we have a list of permissions, and then we have a list of possible user roles. And we also haven't talked about user roles yet, but we'll come back to that soon. So this first column shows anonymous user permissions, and the next one shows authenticated user permissions, and these are two different roles. Now we can probably trace the issue where the search box is visible to us when we're logged in to one of the permissions listed on this page. Let's take a look at a couple of these for example. The headings on each one of these permissions align with modules on the site. So this is the block module, and there's one permission under this module called administer blocks. This is the contact module, and there's a few permissions: administer contact forms and contact form settings, use the site-wide contact form, and use users' personal contact forms. So notice that this is an administrative permission. We would want administrators to have the ability to modify contact forms, but use the site-wide contact form is probably a permission that we want everybody to have, including non-logged in users. This third permission, use users' personal contact forms, sounds a little trickier. It's not as clear whether we want administrators to use this, all users to use this, or just certain users to use this. So the idea is that as you build your site, you can modify the permissions so that each user has access to just the things you want them to have access to. And by default, anonymous users don't have access to that search form. And the main reason is that the search form is a resource-intensive component of the site. And so when it's turned on for anonymous users, it should be done so conscientiously. So let's go ahead and scroll down until we see something about search. Now notice that the modules are in alphabetical order, and eventually we come to the S's and we see search. Okay, so we have a few permissions here: administer search, and use advanced search. And if we look over at the permission checkboxes, we see that only the administrator has all three checked. Neither the anonymous user nor the authenticated user have them checked. So let's go ahead and click the use search permission for anonymous user, and let's go ahead and do it for authenticated user too, because we want all users to use it. And let's go ahead and click it for use advanced search as well. Okay, and let's go ahead and scroll down to the bottom and click save permissions. Now let's jump back to the anonymous browser and refresh. And we now see our search box. Okay, so we got our search box to show. The only thing we need to change about it is where it displays on the page. So let's go ahead and move it from the left to the right. And you probably know how to do this already, but let's go ahead and go through it step by step. I'm going to jump back to the browser where we're an administrator, and I'm going to click on Structure in the admin toolbar, and then I'm going to click on Blocks. And let's go ahead and search for our search form. Okay, it's here in Sidebar first. Let's go ahead and change the region it displays in by using the drop-down box. Let's move it to Sidebar second. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom and click Save Blocks. And I'm going to jump back to our anonymous browser and refresh. Okay, now our box shows on the right. Let's do a quick matchup with our mockup. I'm going to go ahead and open up the resource pack, and I'm going to open up homepage.png. Now if I jump back and forth between the browser and this picture, we see that there's a lot in common. There's a few visual aspects that are different. We don't have a picture yet, and the header and footer have a background image, but we're getting really close.